All right. Well, it's 10:02, so what do you guys say? We'll go ahead and get started. Welcome to everyone that's on the call. Excited that you guys are able to join us today. Happy Friday. Feels like this week went by a little quicker, which was nice. And hard to believe that we're, I don't even know, week 11, 12 of this thing. It's crazy.
A month is.
But I know, who knows? We're already into June. It's crazy. But we're excited for you guys to join us today for this webinar on making fundraising events successful in this new normal. I have Clare, McKenna, and Dani Kline with us, as you can see on the screen. And they are partners together in McKenna Kline Consulting. And so they're going to be walking us through today through some of their experiences in terms of how they've navigated different fundraising events, going through different financial crises. They partnered together, I'll let them share more, but they partnered together at the YMCA for years during different campaigns. And so just going to shed some light on the experience they've had in terms of managing and adjusting their financial strategy in the midst of different crises. Obviously, COVID-19 is a unique crisis compared to other events, but hopefully be able to glean some specific tips and skills as we're all thinking about how we're adjusting our fundraising events. So they're going to walk us through a slide deck with some, I think it's 9 or 10 kind of key points. And at the end, we'll have a time of question and answer for you guys to ask more specific questions about how you've adjusted your events or how you might be able to adjust them in the future. So if you're not familiar with Zoom, feel free to use the chat feature. It's located at the bottom. You have a little toolbar. And just go ahead and chat any questions you have throughout the whole webinar. And I'll be kind of managing those. And at the end, we'll have a time of Q&A where I'll get to read those. And Clare and Dani will be able to answer your questions and kind of get more specific in terms of maybe some challenges that you're facing in your organization specifically. But I did want to let you know before we jump off, we've been doing this series of webinars. We also have a few more upcoming ones. So next week, we're doing one actually in partnership. We're really excited with the Boston Consulting Group. If you know the Boston Consulting Group, they're one of the leading global strategy firms in the US. And they're going to walk us through a helpful framework for considering how to implement new products and programs and adapt your current offerings as a result of COVID to better assist the needs of our community and of your customers. So they're going to be walking us through a helpful framework with that and really helping us as nonprofits not get stuck in the easy problem, which is to keep doing everything the same and hope it's going to work out, but to be forward thinking and adjusting our strategies and thinking through what are the new needs, what are the new demands of our community and of our constituents, and how can we adjust our programs to meet those demands. So that's going to be next week. It's available on our resource page. I'll put the link in here as well. We have someone that's not muted. If you aren't muted, if you can mute yourself, there you go. So yeah, check that out next week. And then also, we previously had the opportunity to do a webinar with Linda Duffy, who's an HR consultant. She walked us through the whole concept of returning back to work, all the legal implications, compliance, government updates. We're going to be doing a more in-depth training on that in terms of HR management and COVID-19 that is also taking place next week. So it's next Friday, June 5th from 9 a.m. to 10:30. And that's going to really take you more in depth, get a little more granular in terms of how to roll out your policies that you're going to have to implement when staff do return back to work, communication change plans. How do you let your staff know, hey, we're going to be coming back. This is the stages that we're doing it in. These are the new rules and policies in the workplace. And so they're going to be covering that and giving you guys actual templates that you can use for developing those new policies. They have the health and safety standard printouts that you can use to put up in your workplace. So it's going to be a very detailed training. If you got a taste of that from the previous class, definitely recommend you joining that if you want more specifics. So that's just a little update in terms of what is going on at 10C. But I'm going to go ahead and pass it off to Clare and Dani to introduce themselves and share about McKenna Kline, and then we'll get ahead and jump into it.
Great, thanks, Kevin. Hi, I'm Dani. I'm the K in MK, and as Kevin said, happy Friday. Welcome, and thank you to 10C for letting MK partner with them to bring you this webinar, and we hope that you find the information that we're bringing to you today helpful.
Hi, I'm Clare McKenna. I'm the M in MK, and we're excited to share some ideas and experiences with you. But before we get started, a couple things. One, we'll be doing a poll. So Kevin will be sending some questions. If you could just fill them out honestly, we're just going to kind of gauge everybody, and then we'll share that in the Q&A. And then second, a little bit about Dani and I. Between the both of us, we have over 40 years of nonprofit experience. But together, we've worked together for about 10 years. And in that 10 years, we managed a $5 million operation, multiple locations, 200 staff. And over those 10 years, working with staff, volunteers, and board members, we raised over $3 million through annual campaign and events. In 2015, we were asked to share our wealth, and it wasn't financially. It was what I call burn and learn. Kind of our successes and failures with our peers and other locations. And what we realized during that is two things. One, we found a passion of helping others succeed. And two, working together. I say this all the time. Dani is one of the best people I know personally and professionally, and I became a better leader and more successful when we worked together. And so one day we were driving home from Marietta, a location we started managing, and we had a huge breakthrough, and it was a great feeling, and it was an hour drive home. And we started then talking about working together and starting our own consulting firm. And so that's how kind of where MK started. And then we started our business in January 2020. So Kevin wanted us to kind of share today our little credibility. Hopefully that kind of shares a little bit. But I always say, if people doubt what you say, but they always believe in what you do. And so today we're going to share some of the things we did through our challenges that we faced. And I hope you guys all walk away with some idea or an inspiration to succeed during these challenging times. So are you guys ready?
So we've opted to do the presentation off camera. I know it makes it a little more difficult to be engaged, but Claire tends to have a lot of energy, and she's more of an in-person type of presenter, and we don't want you to get motion sickness. So we're going to go off camera. You'll see the slides, and then at the end when we do the question portion and the strategy sharing, we'll go back on camera. So hopefully you enjoy.
See you back.
See if I can do this. There we go. And all right.
You missed a slide. It went an extra slide.
All right. Sorry. Hold on one second. Doing the pull out of the thing here.
Go back one more slide.
It will not allow me.
Okay. So we're just going to start,
There we go.
developing new fundraising strategy for events.
So our slogan used to be find the fun in fundraising, but since this whole COVID-19 thing hit us, we had to change it up a little bit and make it to find the funds in fundraising, which is a little more challenging. So our webinar objectives today that to outline is challenges facing nonprofits due to this pandemic. How will the strong survive and thrive? Attitude is everything. SOS, see it, own it, solve it. Tips on thriving during and after this pandemic. And then at the end, like I mentioned, we're gonna have a question answer strategy sharing.
So you guys ready? Let's put on those masks and let's go. So challenges facing nonprofits: no large gatherings, raising funds in an uncertain economy, donors redirecting their donations, new focus on event safety protocols, limited connection with key individuals, and moving to technology across the board. This is kind of what we've been hearing as we reached out to a lot of nonprofit leaders. And if there's any challenges that you're facing that is not on this slide, please chat it to Kevin so we make sure if we don't address it in the webinar, that we address it in the Q&A.
The strong survive, but the stronger thrive. So check your attitude. Flexibility requires an open mind and a welcoming of new alternatives. The comfort zone is the great enemy of creativity. Find a way, not an excuse. And the difference between stumbling blocks and stepping stones is how you use them.
Dani and I felt like this was a very important slide because it's how you react and respond to a challenge. In 2002, 4 months after 9/11, it was probably my second or third year as an executive director in a nonprofit in Yorba Linda. I was delivering a fundraising training with about 20 volunteers and staff. You know, some were just new to this annual campaign, and some were there 5 or 10 years. And as I was doing the training, one of our key volunteers raised their hand and said, you know what, I've been talking to our funders and they're saying they don't have the ability to give. People are giving to the police association, the fire department, you know, 9/11 families. I don't think we're going to make our goal. And instantly when he started talking, I felt this warmth about me, like this fear, like, oh my gosh. And if you guys know me, like Dani kind of says, I have some nervous energy and a mind that goes really quickly. So instantly I came over this fear of, oh my gosh, we're not going to make our goal. We're not going to be able to serve our community. I'm going to get fired. But in the meantime, I looked around and I saw and I noticed everybody around had that same look. And so what I decided is we all have two choices, right? I could have accepted that failure and made excuse not to make our fundraising goal, which was $100,000. Or I could say, I accept that challenge, and which we did. And I just said, if there's a will, there's a way. And so for every donor that said no, we went out and got 2 donors to say yes. For every donor that said that they couldn't give, then we asked the donor to give more. So really, you know, your staff, your volunteers, your community, rather you do something than nothing at all.
So survive and thrive. We've taken the experience that Claire mentioned, along with some conversations we had out in the community and in the industry of events, and came up with 9 tips for thriving in these times. So hopefully you find them beneficial. Fundraising at your fingertips. So the use of fundraising software in order to avoid human contact is going to be key going forward whenever you're going to be holding events. The software will allow you to do registration online, auctions, direct donations, and even app sponsorships. So of course, the benefit of that would be you're going to be able to adhere to the social distancing because all the registration obviously is going to be online. You won't have the big lines and all the contact. The silent auctions can be put, all the pictures of the auction items can be put online and allow people to bid on them via the software. And then also they can directly deposit on the software, not deposit, donate. So they don't even have to come to your event. So there are going to be those people who aren't going to be ready to come out yet, especially the older population. They're going to be staying home. So this will allow them to give a direct donation. And then add sponsorships that you would not normally have, like the banner on top of the auction page on the software could be sold as you know, as someone who could sponsor. So that's an additional revenue that you didn't have. Things to be aware of though would be the additional cost of that software. So there's that, but it will be beneficial and worth the cost. The loss of connection. You won't have those people touching or getting near each other at the auction table, but you also won't have that connection of them vying for, you know, the top bid and that fun camaraderie. And then also you'll have the technically challenged. Those who they fear any kind of technology. They might not come to your event because they can't register, or, you know, you might have to have additional staff or volunteers to help them get registered or at least bid on auction items or direct donate, you know, anything like that. So there's ways, you just have to be creative. So cut the cost, but keep it memorable. So you're gonna have to recalculate your budget. So you might wanna rethink your venue. Is it still a good fit? Is it now too large for the amount of people you're able to have? Or are people even willing to come out? You want to check to see if it's still safe, if you're going to be able to have your attendees far enough apart, or can the event be moved outside? If you had a ballroom that was inside and they have an outdoor space, people are much more comfortable and it's much safer, we know now, to be outside. So those are all things to take into consideration. You can also do a more intimate setting, so you can focus on the details and make it memorable. Claire and I, in our previous nonprofit organization, we created something called a donor dinner, which were smaller, more intimate dinners for donors as a thank you. But this type of thing can be used in place of a big gala or whatever event you had previously planned. You could ask a board member or a one of your donors if they have a big backyard that they wouldn't mind donating for the event. This way you can be outside and the venue is now free. So that's a huge bonus. And then the intimacy of it allows you to connect more with the attendees by spending more one-on-one time. You can really communicate what the need is, what you're raising funds for. You can cultivate that relationship even better because it's on a smaller scale. And when the event's small like this, you can really concentrate on the details, like the little touches, such as decor. So instead of having 50 rented tables and a bunch of standard chairs, you could have a few farm tables, make it more of a rustic theme with hanging candles, even down to the smallest details like rosemary tied to the silverware and the napkins and all those little things that people will remember and make it, special. So you're not compromising the experience. Another thing to keep in mind is venues restricting donated items. So you might have had in your budget that you're not a lot of money on maybe alcohol or something, because you're planning on it being donated. Some of them aren't allowing that anymore, so there will be a cost. And then also the cost of safety protocols. You might have to have staff be around in the venue to make sure that there's not people gathering or there's not too many people in the space or somebody cleaning. So it's definitely possible. It's just, as I said, it's just going to be a little more challenging.
So now, who do you ask to the table? Smaller event, bigger ask. So now that Dani kind of shared that you can have these intimate or smaller venues or smaller events, now you have to be very strategic in your invitation. And just hearing that, you're like, well, I'm going to make sure that big donor or those donors come. But there's one group of people that I want to make sure you don't forget, and we all have these in our nonprofits, is those volunteers that don't have the ability to give, but they're very passionate. They're your advocates. They're great storytellers. Make sure to have them invited so they can spread out through the event, and they'll take a lot of pressure off of you, sharing the story about your mission, but also building the energy. So the other group, of course, as we kind of mentioned, is those donors, making sure, hopefully during this time, you're still in contact with your donors and find out what donors are struggling, what are doing or being successful during these challenging times. So you want to make sure you invite the ones that are able to give, or that donor that you've been wanting to ask to give more. This is an opportunity for them to be a hero and add a zero. In my previous nonprofit, we did a survey with 10,000 donors, and 28% of them said they would give double if they were asked. So I always say, don't pass on the ask. And also, I experienced in my career 9/11 and the recession in 2008. And what I realized, and many of you might have realized this already, is your donors have the ability to give because they're bright, they're smart, and they also understand the responsibility of during challenging times that they need to fill the gap. So those donors that don't have the ability to give can give. And so again, just don't pass down the ask and they'll be able to fill that gap. Some things to be aware of, like as we shared, your invitation list is limited and the attendance is smaller. There are going to be donors who do not make the cut, and you don't want to offend anyone. And I always say honesty is the best policy. So I would personally call them and let them know, just because of attendance issues, that they might not be able to make it, because you definitely don't want them to hear it through social media or through a friend. And Dani kind of shared this, be prepared to make your case. Out of those 10,000 donors that were surveyed, 58% were wanted to give to a need or a program. Many of you already have that need and program, or you might have a new need because of our challenges that we're going through. So at this event, make sure you come to the event with a clear need. And when you communicate it, it's very important that you say, if you donate this amount of money, that it will impact this many people and it will improve their life in what way. But also I want you to be aware of is people are gonna say no. And yes, we all have that fear of rejection, right? It reminds us of junior high and high school. But I kind of want to share a story here. I was working in a nonprofit in Fullerton doing a capital campaign, and we were about $1 million short of where we needed to be. And there was a gentleman, I was given a name of a gentleman in the community who was involved in our nonprofit, but was well known as a sizable donor in the community. So I gave him a call, asked him to come over. He came in, I showed him what we were doing in the backyard. I was felt inspiring, very detailed, showed the impact that we were gonna have. And I looked at him and I said, would you be able to contribute or donate to this capital campaign? And he just looked at me and said, Claire, I told your predecessor that I had the ability to give, and he never asked. And since then, I've given all my funds for this year to other nonprofits. And so I said, okay, thank you. I was very disappointed because of two reasons I learned from this. Again, it's like, don't pass on the ask. My predecessor did and missed an opportunity. And second is no today, but tomorrow is a different. So I made it a challenge for the next year to build a relationship with him, kind of find what his needs and where his focus was, and to get to know him. And every time I saw him in the community or in our facility, I just kept building a relationship. And after a year, he gave us $10,000. And funny thing is, I didn't even really ask, but I got that connection with him. So again, just be prepared. People may say no during this time, but that's just no today. That's not no tomorrow.
So 6 feet of separation, but still connected. So we all are going to have to do some sort of fundraising, some sort of event. But the challenge is not just having it, but having it and still keeping people connected. So I want all of you to think to yourself, challenge accepted, because there's several things you can do to do this. Social media is going to be huge. The photo sharing and the fundraising app as well. So maybe if, for example, if you're going to do a golf tournament, you could create a Facebook event page so everyone could join it at the beginning, because most people have Facebook, and then they are able to comment during the day, post pictures, so people can tell what's going on, in other parts of the event and still feel connected. You could do Facebook Lives on that page. So one of your staff or yourself or someone who's good at social media could do a Facebook Live, so people on the 8th hole can see who's teeing off. So that would keep them connected. Of course, hashtagging all the pictures so everybody can post what they've taken. And then photo sharing apps can be downloaded at the beginning of the event for free. And throughout the day, people just post their pictures and they can go on the app as well and see what's happening all over the golf course. And then the use of fundraising apps, like I mentioned before, where you could still do the auctions and also announce, winners, just making people feel part of the event. They can see who did something well. Something to be aware of would be social media posts should be monitored, because we all know how some things can get out of hand with there's alcohol and golf and, whatever, a party. So you want to just make sure that your organization is being represented well throughout the day, and have someone monitor what's going on. So rewrite your story. How do you rewrite your story to connect the dots from this pandemic experience to the advancement of your mission? So don't panic. We're not having you rewrite your mission or anything, but you're really going to have to hone in on how you relate. So what have we learned in this experience, and how does it relate to your organization? How does your organization fit that need? So a lot of people going forward, in the near future, are going to be giving to organizations such as like the Red Cross, First Responders, Feed America, those type of things. So how will your nonprofit be relevant in this time? During the pandemic, we've seen how music and visual arts have really helped people get through the shelter in place. I mean, we've seen everything from music on balconies to art on the sidewalks. Claire and I are currently working with a nonprofit who offers exposure to the arts to youth as one of their focuses. And that is something that's held dear to my heart, because I have an art degree. And I know that art is usually the first thing to go in schools whenever there's any kind of budget cuts. But this pandemic has really shown how important the arts really are. And the nonprofit we're working with is able to take advantage of that spotlight and add this experience to their storytelling. in our previous nonprofit, Claire and I worked for an organization that put $4 million into a facility at the time of the recession. Well, the recession hit right after. So here we have this beautiful facility with top of the line, everything. You know, who wouldn't want to be a part of that? Well, a lot of our members who had lost their job during the recession, they couldn't afford to even be a part of it anymore. So we made that our platform, our scholarships, the need that, or the desire that everybody should be able to, you know, take part in this. And that's what we, you know, sold to our donors, you know, really made it known that that's where we're still relevant and that we still need their donations. So by rewriting your story, your nonprofit will remain your donor's charity of choice.
Essential donors. Who profited in this pandemic? I used to work at a nonprofit in Yorba Linda. We had a very successful golf tournament in many ways. We netted 70, 80,000. We had great sponsors that had been with us for a long time, many of them in the construction business, mortgage, and realtors. And we had a great golf committee. And then all of a sudden, 2008 hit. And in a matter of that year, we lost a majority of our sponsors. And then sadly enough, a lot of them lost their businesses. And so we were in a position that we had to stop and really personally call every donor that we had, every golfer, and find out, okay, who have we lost? And who can we keep? Who can we, of course, increase their gift? And then we had to go out and really find out what businesses were being successful, that were not suffering during that recession. And so what we had to do was start asking them, started finding people that were connected with them, and we were able to make up that money and continue. We didn't raise as much. I think it came to 60,000 at that year, but it definitely hurt us. But I think what we also did was we built our donor network. We found new donors that before, and I hate to say this, and many of you might have experienced this, but some of those donors that had been with us for 6, 7 years. And so I feel like we got a little comfortable. We didn't really go out and recruit any new donors or sponsors. And many of those sponsors, instead of us recruiting, they just increased their gift. And so that's something you need to be aware of. So now you're going to go out and get new donors. They might not be long-term, but you also got to keep in mind those donors that you might have that has been sponsoring an event that are not able to give, they've given and increased their gift over a period of time. So say you had a donor that gave $5,000 or $10,000, now you're going to need 3 to 5 donors to make up that loss. But definitely I learned several things during that year. Is there are businesses that are successful. Something also I learned is so many of those donors were great. And what happened was golf tournaments at that time were big. Everybody had one. And it was funny because afterwards, a lot of them stopped having them. And so it's funny, the next slide, we're going to be talking about golf tournaments. But a lot of people gave, but they didn't golf. And what we did is we called the donors that were with us that weren't able to give, that loved our tournament, and we asked them to play in it as our guest. And that's a key thing about cultivating donors is they were there for you in your need. Now it's time to be there for them. And it's a great opportunity. And some of those donors then came back when they built their company back up and continued to contribute to us. So it definitely paid off in more ways than one, that recession. We learned a lot. Okay, ditch the dress and grab the clubs. Many of you might have canceled your galas or galas in the future. But as we all know, golf courses are the first to open. Many of you might have experienced going to a golf tournament or running a golf tournament, and things are going to be changed a little bit during this next year. So there was always that great reception where you did the fun, food, and fundraising. Well, you're not going to be able to have maybe that reception. So now you have to enhance the golf experience. But keep in mind, you have 18 holes to do that. So you increase contests on the holes, maybe giveaways, For example, we ran that golf tournament in Yorba Linda, and after 9/11, we had our tournament in November. We gave these very nice golf vests out that we embroidered the American flag on the back, just as a memory of that year and to respect what happened. And everybody really appreciated that little personal touch, as Dani always talks about. So just keep that in mind. There's already, now you can do masks as giveaways with your logo or your sponsor logo, hand sanitizer. So just keep that creativity going in this time. And as Dani shared in an earlier slide, those apps that can be used, yes, the registration, the auction, all that great stuff. But also remember, you can use it for your golf packages, because that's such a key part of a golf tournament, to make some net or a minimal amount of cost. But also something you can do is, as many we know, when we do a golf tournament, everybody, 20, 30% leave after golf. This is an opportunity to make sure now on the media, on the app, you can share all the winners of the tournament and the contest. And I think those guys, or anyone that golfs, is going to definitely enjoy that part of it. And then there is the tee times in place of shotgun. So as you guys have been a part of golf tournaments, there's about 150 golfers or 144 golfers all sitting around ready to tee off all together on different holes. As we reached out to the general managers, what they're doing instead is doing tee times. So just like they do in the TV on the PGA tournament. So a positive on this is now you can work around the player's golf on their schedule. So instead of maybe teeing off at 12, they can tee off at 1, and then they can work their schedule around it. Also, another benefit is, as people are teeing off now, it's going to be just one foursome. So you're able to recognize them and say, oh, Dani Kline is teeing off. She's with MK Consulting, and they're our major sponsor. Thank you so much for supporting us.
Which will never happen because I don't golf, but whatever.
But it's a great opportunity to kind of share that personal touch and recognize your donors in a different way. And everybody likes to hear their name on a microphone, right? So, but as Dani kind of shared in an earlier slide, and we heard this from all the general managers, and if you've ever ran an event on a golf course, is the beer, the cigars, the food, they're not going to let you donate those items, bring them onto the course. Because just like all of you, they have struggled with getting revenue, and so they need food and services. So just keep that in mind, that there might be a bigger fee or no donation at all on the course. But I want to make it clear that all the general managers that we spoke to at the 4 or 5 different courses in Orange County, they're very excited, open, and willing to do a golf tournament for you to help your nonprofit.
So lastly, I'm sure you kind of caught on that Claire has her little sayings, and one of them was spread like butter in the past, which she'd walk through the office and say, spread like butter to all the staff who are standing around talking. So little did we know it would be relevant now, because spread like butter is one of the only ways you're going to be able to hold an event with a large, amounts of people. So when we were doing our investigative work and talking to the general managers at places like golf courses and event places, one of them came up with a great idea, which would be spreading large groups into multiple rooms. So if you had a big party that was coming in, a big event in a ballroom, you could spread the same amount of people into 3 ballrooms. So you could use audio visual to connect the rooms. You could even have a stage in one room, and that person who's talking, or if there is any kind of auction going on, that could be broadcasted into the other 2 rooms. So then everybody that's attending this event would feel connected and not like they're in a separate room. Obviously the benefits would be to keep that social distancing and keep the in-person experience. But things to be aware of would be the increased cost of the multiple rooms and the audio-visual rental, because obviously you're going from 1 room to 3, and also the renting of the audio-visual into all the different rooms would be a lot more costly. The need for safety monitors for the room attendants and cleanliness would be key here, because if you are letting people go into these 3 rooms, you're going to have to monitor if they're crossing over, so there's not too many people in one room. And also to keep the place safe, like constantly, cleaning, like you see at the grocery stores now, where there's somebody out there cleaning the carts. You're going to have someone, walking around cleaning constantly in order to keep people safe and continue to have these events.
It's not the answer that enlightens, but the question. So we're excited if you have any questions for us. We'd love to answer them, or any ideas or any discussions. We will definitely probably hear from Kevin now with what he's been able to receive, and definitely hear the results from the poll.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and show the results of the poll, and then we can jump into some of the questions. So here are the results. If you guys want to take a look, they should be showing up on your screen. So it looks like 100% of people have had to postpone an event in some capacity. Not so surprising. Do you still need to raise funds for 2020? 100% people also said yes. And what are your budgeted net in events for 2020? So kind of ranging perspective, but the majority is over 100,000. So clearly we've had to adjust. There still remains demand, and the demand's pretty significant in terms of over $100,000. And question 4 is actually interesting. Do you already struggle with fundraising and find this new environment to be more impossible? Most people said, 52% of people agreed. Very few people disagreed. So pretty understandable. So hopefully some of these tools and tricks prove to be helpful as you're thinking through. There still remains a demand to do your events. How do you reschedule them? How do you keep them active, but also keep everyone safe and healthy? Some of the questions that came through, one was, we had chosen in the past to not use online auction because of the cost of the software and the percentage that the company took. Do you know the average percentage or average cost? Is it worth the cost?
I definitely believe so, especially if it's going to hold you back from using them, and you need to use them with these safety protocols. But as Dani said, we figured the cost out, it would be like $2,500 or $3,000 for a $25,000 event or whatever. So in a percentage of the credit card. But the key thing is you can find a sponsor for that, and that sponsor would be then on the app.
As I shared the banner on top of where the auction would go, that person who's sponsoring the software would have their logo, and it's prominent, right. And throughout the whole software. So that could be, that's a $3,000 donation.
Right, or it could be up to $5,000. It's just like if you do, it's all about the title sponsor, and this is where everybody's going to register. This is where everybody's going to do the auction. And so imagine how many people are going to be seeing that. So as you work with them, there's some great companies that are out there. Figure exactly that cost out, maybe put $1,000 more onto it, and offer that as a sponsorship package.
Yeah, that's a great point, because generally someone also asks, what is the percentage usually? I've seen them to be around 4 or 5% in terms of how much they charge for the fee. So like Dani said, if you can find someone to sponsor that and cover that cost, that's incredibly helpful.
Sorry, Kevin, one person we're working with is you have an upfront subscription fee that is for a year, so if you have multiple. And then this one that we were working with had 2%. So awesome. You just have to investigate and find the best one. And definitely the customer service is key.
Do you have any, someone asked about it, do you have any that you would recommend, or apps? What are the 2 that you're referencing?
You know what, there's a couple, and we can get you that information, and you can send that out yes, we can get you that information.
Cool. Someone said, I struggle with what types of auction items to seek out. Do you have any types of recommendations?
Well, that's a great question, because in changing times, so before, auction items that were really good were traveling, and not everybody is traveling. But we did packages of, getting somebody to do the cleaning service and then cleaning your windows, put this whole package together, and then going to get a massage. So you could be very creative if what is everybody looking for now in this new way of life, and developing great donated items, and then just asking around. A lot of people want to get businesses back in, customers back into their business. And so I definitely think they're willing to do that, because if they do their job well, they're going to be new customers for life.
Yeah.
That's great. Someone asked, we didn't talk about it too much. We've covered this in other webinars, but what about having virtual events? What online events have you seen that are effective? Feels like people are getting, quote, zoomed out and tired of Zooming.
Right. Yeah, that's why we didn't say it, because I think we knew at this time, at the end of May, that the later phases of opening California were coming. And I do agree that people are just tired. They want to go out.
They want to do something.
They want to be out. They want to go to an event. They want to see people. And I think the only people that might not be willing to go out is, like you said, the ones that, are a little bit higher risk people. So I think it's a great opportunity to do an event, because people want to go out. They want to be a part of something. And in the meantime, they get to help somebody in their nonprofit.
Yeah, totally. And, I think it's a great question. I think some nonprofits will still be doing it. But like you guys mentioned, as we're moving, almost into phase 3, and we're thinking, Q3, Q4, what do some of these events look like? Thinking through stuff like golf tournaments and other like in-person events that you can do safely is probably where a lot of the fundraising events are going to be headed. Some will still be on Zoom, but yeah, like you guys mentioned, I think people are slowly, very slowly wanting to acclimate back to some type of in-person event. Oh, great. Just a few recommendations. People said for online auctions, we use Greater Giving. So that's one resource people recommended. And then we use GiveSmart as our online event app. It costs $3,000 without in-person event support, and donors can pay the cost of the fees. So you can set that option in the system. And they said that we get 80% of the ticket buyers choosing to cover the cost. Okay. So yeah, that's another great option.
There's creative ways of finding new sponsors. Like Dani mentioned, even like the cleaning crew or somebody that's monitoring, could sponsor that, and the people that are doing it can wear their logo on their shirt. So there's definitely creative ways to these additional costs that come during these challenging times to get them covered by a donor.
Definitely. All right. Well, it looks like that is kind of the end. Oh, one more question that came through. Sorry. When would you guys recommend that people start recruiting donors or sponsorships? Like in terms, say an event is in 3 months or 4 months, how far out have you guys generally started that recruiting process of donors and sponsorship?
Well, typically we do 6 months, but I think with the challenging time, I would start today. If you've done the event before, I would find out what donors you have still, so you know what you have to make up, that loss. But I would start today, because I think in challenging times, and you don't want to procrastinate or hold off on something like that. So I would start today, and definitely, as we shared today, we've done a few of events in our time, several events. We'd love to sit down with anyone that is willing to meet with us, or a conference call to share more ideas or questions, or just brainstorm how we can be successful during these times.
Definitely. Well, that's great. Thank you guys so much. I'll definitely be sure for everyone that's on the call, and we often have people, that weren't able to join us. I'll be sending out the recording of this, as well as some of those resources that Dani and Claire mentioned in terms of fundraising applications and other things you can use. And definitely will include their contact information. If you have additional follow-up questions or are in need of additional support, definitely will make themselves available for you guys.
Sure.
But I think we're getting a lot of just thank yous, a lot of positive feedback, but I think that is pretty much it. Very helpful. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for the personal thank you. We appreciate it. That's the personal touch.
That's right.
Very, very good. So awesome, guys. Thank you so much, Dani and Claire. And we really appreciate the partnership we have with you guys at OneOC. And thanks for taking out, an hour of your time and the time to prepare this for our members and for our nonprofits. I think it was really valuable, and look forward to connecting in the future.
Well, thank you.
Thank you, Kevin.
Have
You've
a
been
great
great.
weekend,
You've been
guys.
very good to us.
All right, take care, guys. Have a good weekend.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.